Few missions matter more than helping people live healthier, happier, and longer lives. But turning that mission into reality at scale is one of the greatest challenges of our time. In this podcast, I speak with the people who are taking that challenge head on, health entrepreneurs who have dedicated their personal and professional lives to creating maximal impact, the true impact junkies. My name is Daniel. Join me as I speak with them about the stories behind the mission, the wins, the losses, the challenges, and the breakthroughs, with the hope of inspiring many more people to join the mission and the health revolution. Today's guest on Impact Junkies is Indya Agos, a coach who has truly managed to translate her own trauma and pain into inspiration and change for others. Welcome to Impact Junkies. Indya, welcome.
Hi.
Welcome to
So
Copenhagen, all the way from Hawaii.
Hawaii.
And you had a pit stop in Cologne for FIBO first. Tell me just quick, how was it at FIBO?
Honestly, it was so cool being in Germany. I'm half Peruvian, half German, so it was my first time to Germany, and I went to Peru in 2023, and it was like a really kind of spiritual experience, but then I didn't expect, I don't know why I downplayed Germany, but my family came over to the States in World War II in 1950. My grandpa was a soldier to fight against Germany, and he joined the Americans, and so it was just like, I don't know, a really cool experience to be back where I'm from.
Amazing.
You know what I mean?
You'll have to go back when it's a bit less busy than FIBO usually is.
Yeah.
A couple of 100,000 people coming through that venue in that time. But I'm glad you had a good experience, and I'm very happy to have you here in Copenhagen.
I'm so excited.
Yes. And we're going to talk about your journey and your coaching journey. You've been a health entrepreneur in this sense since January 2023. And within that short time span, you've helped already well over 1,000 women to change and transform their lives. And I think one thing which really stands out in your coaching service is how satisfied they are. Your clients have an average NPS score of 9.1, which is extremely high by any sense of the measure, which is, I think, a testament to how good you are at taking something which is like the cornerstone of what you do, is taking your lived experiences and translating that into something useful and actionable for others, but in a meaningful way. What do you think when you hear some of that? Or what are your thoughts on the impact that that actually has on people?
Honestly, it makes me really emotional. Like, even just putting it into perspective, because I forget, you know, sometimes it's like your weight loss journey. You look at yourself every day in the mirror and you're like, not that much is changing. Or like when you're growing your hair out, you're like, man, I just really want long hair. But you keep looking in the mirror and like judging that measure of, you know, day by day. And when you say that out loud, I'm like, man, I really have been putting in the work the past several years, and it's paying off. And it's beautiful to hear you celebrate me that way. So thank you.
It's paying off for others, and it's paying off for yourself. You've been through many chapters, I would say, in your young life. It's like, it's one of these books where the chapters change and evolve, right? But and you say sometimes you're bad at stopping up and looking at where you are now. If you're going to just do that for a second and highlight, what are some of the big positives that you reflect on when you look at your current life as a health entrepreneur and where you've gotten to now?
Like some milestones?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I'm in Copenhagen right now.
That's
with
a good
Linus. That's a huge milestone for me. You know, when I started this journey, it was 2020, it was in the pandemic, and I wanted to become an online entrepreneur because I had spent my 20s traveling through Southeast Asia, where there's just a bunch of digital nomads. And I was like, I really, really want that lifestyle for myself. And so I think just being an online entrepreneur is probably my biggest milestone. Like every time I open up my laptop at an airport or on an airplane or in a different country, I feel so grateful. So that's like a huge thing for me. And then partnering with Linus was a huge milestone for me too, because I was doing it on my own before. And then I would also say just being in content. When I started with Linus, I had like 1,700 followers, and now I have almost 1 million on my combined platforms. So
that's quite a change.
Yeah, and I've been putting in the work, but Linus has supported me through it, and I wouldn't be here if I wasn't for them.
Amazing. Hey guys, just a quick interruption from me because I have something to ask of you. If you enjoy these conversations, or maybe they even inspire you, please follow, subscribe, or rate the show wherever you're listening or watching. It would mean so much to me. And more importantly, it will help us bring even more impactful stories to more people. All right, let's get back to it. What was it about that digital nomad lifestyle that you met in Asia that really attracted you to it?
I think the way that I grew up in like American society as well is like you get up, you go to work, 9 to 5, whatever it is. And I bought a one-way ticket to Asia when I was 23, and I was a hairdresser at the time.
Mm.
And hairdressing was amazing for my creativity, but like you have to show up in a way where it's physically and emotionally exhausting every day. Creativity, like pouring into people, and then you're on your feet all day in these shoes. Like it's actually wild. And so when I went to Asia and I saw these people waking up at 10 a.m. and working for a few hours and then going to the gym and then going to the beach and then coming back and working for a few hours, I was like, you guys look so satisfied and happy with yourselves and you're taking care of yourselves. Something in that society's like experience, I wasn't even able to go to the gym. You know, I was just so busy all the time,
Right.
and I wasn't able to pour into myself. And so I just felt like I wanted that freedom. You know what I
Amazing.
mean?
And amazing to achieve that.
Yeah.
Actually.
And then experience the world while working. That's crazy.
Great.
Yeah.
So we mentioned or alluded to in the start several chapters in your life, obstacles that you've had to overcome.
Yeah.
And in order to understand the India sitting in front of me now, I'd like to take a step back and understand, well, where you came from and what you actually had to live through, the lived experience that we spoke about.
Yeah.
Can you take me back to young India, your childhood, and what that environment was like?
Well, to summarize my story a little bit, my mom had me when she was 15 and unfortunately struggled with addiction my entire life. My father wasn't present. She did remarry, but also he was in and out of prison my entire life. And eventually I was like put into the system a couple of times, always put back into my mother's care, but honestly, she wasn't equipped to be the parent that I needed. And then I was emancipated when I was 15. So given custody of myself by the state and went full-time from like balancing high school, but full-time into work and just trying to figure the world out.
Yeah. That's very early to have to navigate all of that. I think, did you have a sense of a lot of responsibility that you had to take on you? I mean, you have a very young mother.
Yeah.
It kind of gives me an impression that within that type of household, everyone has to contribute somehow.
Yeah.
Is that does
Yeah,
that
I've always
resonate?
been the caretaker. My mom is the oldest of her siblings, and then I'm the oldest of mine. And, you know, I feel like she relied on me a lot. And so even as I transitioned into my journey independently at 15, I already felt like an adult. Looking back, I want to like go back and give that 15-year-old hug and be like, babe, just be a kid. But I felt like I was already responsible enough and in some ways more responsible than her.
Mm. What else would you say to 15-year-old you if you had the chance?
It's going to turn out better than you could ever imagine. I
And
can't believe that's 16 years ago.
it is. And what did you imagine at that point? Because I think I'm always curious about that. In that type of situation, looking forward and seeing what does life have in store for me? What did you have that kind of
At
those
15,
types? Yes.
all I wanted was to make it out of my teen years without teen pregnancy.
Mm.
I remember thinking to myself when I was 15, it's so sad. I remember thinking to myself when I was 15, I can't wait till I can go into the grocery store and not have to check my bank account before I go in. That's how I know I made it.
So some form of financial freedom. Well,
Not
freedom.
even. I just wanted stability.
Mm.
And I fantasized about having kids and getting married so I could have a family. And I was like, by the time I'm 25, I'm going to have 3 kids. Like I had this whole life plan that I thought I wanted. And then I turned 25 and I was like, I'm way too young to have kids. I still feel that way at 31.
Push that a bit. Just push that a little bit.
Yeah.
And how was school? Sounds like a pretty chaotic environment.
Yeah.
Where, school and all that, of course, requires some other stability, which it seems you didn't have. What was your experience of school like?
I went to like 12 different schools.
That's a lot.
Yeah, we moved a lot. We had to. We were constantly like evicted from our place and struggled with homelessness my entire life. And I am actually dyslexic. And because I moved around so much, they didn't catch it. And I went to school really early because obviously like they needed care for me. And so I was already the youngest in my class. And they didn't catch my dyslexia until 7th grade. It was the first day of 8th grade, actually. And I did like this quick intro test on the 8th grade day. And I guess I did it too quick and I passed like crazy or something. They pulled me into the principal's office and I thought I was in trouble and put me through several other tests. And then they called my mom in and I was like, I'm not cheating. Like, I don't know what's going on. And they were like, you're too smart. We have to put you into high school. And I went into high school as a 14-year-old freshman.
So that's some big jumps, right? The independency on one side, and I think also a big shift in not just others' perception of you potentially, but maybe also your perception of yourself.
Yeah, I thought I wasn't intelligent.
Yes.
Yeah, but apparently I was.
Yeah.
I am.
Yeah, and I am.
Yeah.
And I guess was a good foundation to achieve more than what you initially thought was
Yeah.
possible. All right, so you're skipped ahead in school now
Yeah.
instead of being held back.
Yeah.
And does that change your premise at that time? Like, what else is going on in your life?
Well, there was a lot. My mom's still very deep in her addiction. And when I was put into high school, I was surrounded by kids that were a lot older than me. So I feel like in a lot of ways, I was just around young adults and adults who there's caused me to grow up a little quicker. And so I'm grateful that they caught it and that I was able to give, like the high school I went to helped me with the tools to like, you know, go through my dyslexia and then eventually get good test scores. Like I was doing better in school. But I do feel like the influence of it was really difficult for me to navigate because I didn't have the support at home I needed.
Makes sense. Looking back now, because it seems like you've, of course, done that quite a bit and reflecting on 14, 15-year-old you had to mature very quickly.
Yeah.
You had to, navigate a lot of things yourself without a big support system. What do you think's the actual cost of that for you?
Childhood. Yeah. I think that I am so happy to hear about other people's experience, but there's a truth of mine that's really hard and it's a big grievance in my life that when I look back on childhood, I don't have happy memories. I don't feel like a kid. And so I think that's why I spent my 20s traveling. I think that's why I'm like spend my 30s with freedom the way I do, as in tribute to my inner child, you know.
Yeah. There's playfulness in that.
Yeah, and
There's
I'm connected to
elements
her more now, but I'm sad for her as well.
Makes sense. And I guess when you say playfulness and freedom, you're emancipated at 15 years old, which means now you have to fend for yourself.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
So I was going to school full time. I went to an alternative high school. I think there was like 12 people in my graduating class. But it was a really intimate environment, and we like called our teachers by their first name. So I was going to school full time, and then I also wanted to be a hairdresser like my entire life. That was another thing at 15. I was like, I just want to be a hairdresser. I just thought they were so cool looking and gorgeous, and I don't know. I just loved their confidence, and so went to beauty school while I was going to high school. And then when I became emancipated, I'm required to work, so I have to be able to hold down school and a job. And I couldn't balance beauty school. So I quit beauty school and I went full time into coffee, and I was like a barista. I like managed a coffee shop and everything. It was super cool. I would get up super early, like 4 a.m., run to work, run to school, and then go back and finish it after. And then I, just tried to find that balance until I couldn't. And I wasn't able to sustain it any longer. Bills are expensive, and honestly, the people I was hanging around influenced me in a negative way, and I fell into that peer pressure. And so I ended up dropping out of high school to work full time, and I got my GED immediately and passed that really well. And then went to beauty school later in life.
Wow.
Yeah.
And this is you at 15.
Yeah,
right?
15,
Working,
16, yeah.
Working, getting up at 4 a.m. to go to work, going to school, going to work again.
Yeah.
No, that's a lot more than most 15-year-olds
Yeah,
have
when
to.
my mom left, she went to a different state, and so I was all alone. And I actually slept in an abandoned house for the first part of it. And so I had a cell phone, but I would set my alarm, and I literally just slept in this room. There was no furniture, no electricity, and I would get up and run to work and run to school. I just wanted to make it.
That sounds scary as well, though.
Yeah, but I think that for me at that time, it was normal. Like it was just a normal reality. Yeah.
Yeah, that was just what you had to do.
Yeah.
So did you at that point think, was it still the goal of just being able to, get by and maybe have your own place and that kind of thing?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if I even dreamed about having my own place.
No.
I don't know. I think it was just so day by day getting through it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So where does life lead you then? I mean, you're grinding away. You're getting by. You're making it by yourself. You became a hairdresser.
Yeah.
At that point now, so you're working as a
In
hairdresser.
2014.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was a goal. That was a dream, I guess, at that point, because
Yeah.
you were like, hairdressers are stunning. They have the
Amazing.
confidence, and you achieved that. So I also hear some some successes building up somehow on your own merit,
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
I mean, things that you've managed to achieve by
Hmm.
yourself while navigating. Did you reflect on that at that time, or is it only looking back that you can see it that way?
I was proud of myself when I graduated beauty school.
Right.
I didn't have anybody show up at my graduation, so I feel like even in that moment when I was celebrating, it was hard for me to be present. And even looking back now, I struggle with that too, not having people to celebrate my wins. But I think the healing thing too is like whenever I'm in those moments, I'm like, I did this for me ultimately. And
Mm.
so I think reflecting on the fact that I just need to celebrate me more often without the permission of other people telling me I did a good job and just recognizing I did.
Those are good lessons,
Yeah.
which require for you to stop up every now and then,
Yeah.
maybe on a travel or a
Yeah.
journey
In Copenhagen.
in Copenhagen, and reflect a bit, which we can do here as
Yeah, I
well.
feel really proud of myself.
And you should,
Thank
as
you.
you should do. One thing which we haven't spoken about, I think, which is in that form of upbringing, I guess it's fair to say being also relatively poor, then focus on health, nutrition, all of these things are not part of the daily, let's
No.
say, agenda. What is your relationship to yourself, your body, food, and that type of thing in this
Yeah.
period?
My grandma struggled with eating addiction, not openly, but eating disorder, I should say, my entire life. Not openly, but we all knew it was happening.
Mm.
And she was a Weight Watchers girly as well. And so there was a point when I was actually placed with her for a year, and I was 9. And every Saturday morning, she would take me to a Weight Watchers meeting, and then Sundays we'd go to church, and it was just a constant. It was me witnessing her constantly struggling with her body. Like we would have popcorn and she would romanticize the fact that it was plain burnt popcorn with no salt or butter on it, So I feel like in that sense, my influence is like my mom talking badly about her body and my aunts constantly pointing out how uncomfortable they are with their thighs or their stomach from a really young age. And so
Mm.
already picking myself apart, but then when it came to like the way we navigated food, like you said, I was extremely poor
Mm.
and we were, struggled with homelessness. We struggled with money on food stamps and things like that. And a lot of the times we did our grocery shopping at the food banks, which is bread, cereal, like whatever you can get. And so when I started my journey, I didn't even know what a calorie was. Like I heard the word, but had no understanding of what it was and or how it affected my life or my
Mm.
body. So, growing up on top of ramen and
Right,
hamburger helper and
right.
stuff.
I have 2 questions. One follow-up, just to understand, because I've heard
Yeah.
the term Weight Watchers a
Y'all
couple
have
of
that
times.
here?
I don't think in the same way, but I'm
Okay.
just curious, what from young you participating in Weight Watchers meetings,
Mhm.
what's going on in that type of meeting, and how are things spoken about that are potentially very different from how you would do that now?
Do you know what AA is?
Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of like that kind
Mm.
of a vibe. It feels kind of inspiring sometimes. And to a young child, teenager, it didn't feel inspiring. It felt so boring and uncomfortable. But I'm hearing all these adults pick themselves apart. But they're kind of like sitting there in like a focus circle talking about their struggles with food. And then, also like looking at a donut and being like, yeah, it's only, I don't know what it is, like 6 points, which means you could have it once a week. And so then
Uh,
also giving a narrative around food that food is bad
mm.
or food makes you fat. You know what I mean?
Right, right,
So,
right. So potentially quite different from how you look at it now and communicate to
oh,
clients, right?
100%. I had a candy bar before this
Yeah.
podcast.
Beyond that freedom, what are some of the key differences in how you talk? Because I guess some of these narratives still live, right? I mean, there's
Oh,
there's,
yeah.
there's like an undertone of
And
some of that
I still
still,
have those thoughts.
right?
Yeah. Right. It's conditioning.
It is. And you mentioned now, you alluded to starting your journey. Can you tell me about that period of life and what actually kickstarted that?
Yeah, I mean, I will always say the story exactly as it is because it was a moment in time. And a lot of my clients as well, they'll be like, what was the thing? And for me,
Mm.
it was an aha moment. I was actually getting ready to go to lunch with my family, and I got out of the shower butt naked, and I saw my reflection in the mirror. And I immediately thought to myself, oh my God, you look disgusting. How did you let your life get so out of control? I had no idea that I was overweight. I had no idea I was fat.
Mm.
And I think I knew I struggled with weight. I was bullied my entire life really bad for my weight as well from family, siblings, peers. But I did not know how big I had gotten, 250 pounds at 5'4".
Mm.
And it was really, really confronting. And I was like, in that moment, literally, this is like a split second. I was like, okay, nobody's going to change your life except for you. So you're going to be vegan. And
A 1 + 1 = vegan.
yeah, exactly. Because that's my conditioning. And,
Uh,
like even talking about it with you, it's like, oh, that's why I thought this, because I had the conditioning that I needed to be on a diet. I've witnessed diets my entire life, right? And my mom put me on weight loss pills when I was 8 years old. So I hit puberty when I was 9, which is very young,
yes.
right? And so started to develop breasts and all of that and put on puberty weight at 9 years old, which is why I was bullied for it. But she
Mm.
was constantly putting me on diets in her way of like not helping me accept my body, but protecting me in her like really, I guess, kind of sick way. She just didn't want me to feel insecure, but that caused me to be hyper aware. And so when I was going through my weight loss journey, I was like, oh, I'll be vegan because vegans are healthy. They eat vegetables. But for the first 4 weeks of that, all I ate was refried beans because I didn't know there was pork fat in it. Refried beans and peanut butter. And I got really sick.
Oh,
But that really kickstarted everything for me.
I'm curious about, I mean, beyond what you saw in the reflection, right? There's you've had this potentially negative self-talk, which is conditioned as
Yeah.
you mentioned, right? Is there anything else in that you kind of wanted to steer away from, like things that you didn't want to be in relation to potentially your family or your surroundings or a narrative?
Yeah. I saw my mom, and it's not because my mom did struggle with her weight up and down as addicts do. But when I looked in the mirror, I saw my mom. I saw a victim. I saw somebody who was letting circumstance take control of their life, and I knew that I had the power to take back mine. I remember from a really young age witnessing my mother and thinking to myself, I'm sorry, Mom, but I would think to myself, you look like an idiot and I never want to be there. Like, you look crazy. You're constantly fighting with yourself and battling addiction. Like, wake up. And I realized in that moment, that's what I saw. And so I didn't want to be her. And that's how I changed my life.
Yeah. Which has got to do with taking back control,
Yeah.
whether it's addiction or food controlling you or whatever it might be. I hear that was like the main battle,
Yeah.
taking back control.
Yeah.
How did you take back control beyond becoming vegan? Because that didn't last all that long. I could imagine getting sick from
Yeah.
the food. Like what? Because you need to start building some form of a toolbox, right? You're not educated on this. You haven't grown up in an environment where you know what taking control of your health means.
Yeah.
So how do you go about that?
I feel like still to this day, I struggle with that, like taking control. Like I'm
Mm.
a control freak, to be honest, something I'm working on. How did I take back control? I think the biggest thing was like the structure around veganism really did help me in a way where it gave me food rules, which I don't agree with now as an approach to weight loss, but it allowed me to step away from Reese's peanut butter cups and cheeseburgers every single day, and that's what I was eating. And so I took back control by, educating myself around nutrition, starting to look at the food label and actually reading an ingredient. Like I never had done that in my life before. And then also once I started learning more about macros and even micronutrients like fiber and stuff like that, starting to like make sure I had 130 grams of protein a day. And so I took back control by educating myself
Mm.
around nutrition, I
Yeah.
guess. Yeah.
Which is a big step for most
Yeah.
people, right? Is actually just having some base knowledge, but the power to implement is a totally different beast, right?
Yeah.
And that's potentially also what you see with your clients, right? Because in this day and age, it's not knowledge that we lack, right? You can look up what, like you mentioned, what should your protein goal be? What's a good macro split on an ingredient or on a product? But
Right.
actually acting upon it, creating change by yourself. I think that's quite a statement to your, let's say, conviction that you could actually do it
Yeah.
without any guidance.
I wanted to prove to myself that if anybody could do it, it was going to be me.
It had to be you,
Yeah,
as you mentioned
it had
before.
to be.
Yeah, no one else can take control for you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, amazing. So what else is going on? You're starting to change your life now. You're a
Yeah.
hairdresser. You've achieved that, right?
Yeah.
You've
I'm
taken
a vegan.
You're a vegan, somewhat. You've taken some big steps in, building a toolbox and actioning that. Is life getting less chaotic for you or not?
Yes. I have stability. I have a roof over my head. I'm creating friends for the first time in my life because when you move around like that, you don't really have friends. So I'm creating community. Found financial stability and bringing in like at the beginning 40 and then $60,000 a year. So, towards the end when I bought a one-way ticket when I was 23, but I struggled a lot with toxic relationships, and I wasn't at this point that I realized it, but I was struggling with a form of alcoholism for sure, and using alcohol as a coping mechanism.
Also within toxic relationships, what would you mind elaborating on that?
Well, relationships that aren't healthy.
Yeah.
I feel like even to this day, we can find ourselves in dynamics that just aren't supportive of who we want to be and who we are. But definitely relationships that, had a lot of abuse in it, emotional, physical abuse, things like that.
Yeah. And is it fair to say that some of like placing yourself in that environment can also be because it's what you knew?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
it can.
That's how I received love. So of course, that's how I'm going to think love goes.
Yeah. Although it's a bit of a paradox from the outside, but it's what you know.
Yeah.
Right. So repeating those patterns. At what point do you kind of realize that this is a context that you're putting yourself in, and escape from that, or make a change?
I'm a firm believer that the universe will make you learn a lesson a million times until you learn it. And so if I'm getting the same results over and over again, the common denominator is me. And until I'm tired of those results, I'm going to keep doing the pattern. Do you know what I mean? So
when do you get tired? When did you get tired enough of the same pattern to make a change?
I'm sad to say, but it wasn't until like 2023 that I really stepped away from a lot of toxic relationships. But I stopped drinking in 2020, and that did help me a lot. Because I wasn't using alcohol to hide from my emotions anymore, or to socialize, or to become fun or sexy or beautiful. Like I just would lean on it. Every time, even in this scenario, I'm like, yo, can I take a shot really quick? Like just so I'm funny. But I don't need that anymore. And so I think that wake up calls for me were abandonment in relationships, physical and emotional, physical abuse, when it was just like an actual slap in the face that was like, oh, I don't actually need to be here. I don't deserve this. And again, I don't want to be my mother. And when I would see her come through, or even parts of her, I would sit with it and wonder if this is what I need or how I want to continue.
That was the cue. If you look and see this is a pattern which my mother had, then I need to change something.
Yeah, and it's not all her.
No.
But yeah, she was my example, and my example of what I don't want.
Yeah. Being in that environment, there can be a bit of friction when you are in the process of actually changing your life, right? You're improving, let's say, the base of the pyramid, your habits, movement, diet, and all that, which is quite a contradiction to some other elements of that environment.
Yeah.
Right? It can give some type of friction, not just because it doesn't allow you to do it, but it's the opposite potentially of what others are doing. Is that something you experienced as well?
I feel like there's this quote that goes along with what you were trying to say is, traumas at work when a person ends up in the exact situation they were trying to avoid. And so I think that that's where I've had a lot of wake-up calls. Like, oh, I wasn't trying to be here. And there is friction because it causes you to sit there and ask yourself, how am I contributing to the situation? And sometimes I was the toxic one. Like a lot of the times I could have been, for sure. Like I'm not flawless.
No. And were others potentially looking negatively at the change that you were making?
Oh my gosh, yeah. And my family did not believe in me at this time, and all I've ever wanted is for my family to support me and clap for me. But yeah, nobody believed I was going to do it. I don't think that they could believe it for themselves. So how could they believe it for me?
Right. But you made the change with conviction again. And where did that lead you to? I mean, you're stacking wins and change and improvement and realizing that your environment potentially also needs to change. At what point, like what drives you to actually take the leap to even distance yourself or put yourself in a totally different environment?
Yeah, when I went to beauty school, my mom still struggled with addiction. She didn't get sober until 2020, so I was 26 when my mom got sober. And I think that she's struggled off and on a little bit, but since then maybe. But I think that the big thing was when I moved to Seattle from Texas, which is where most of my family lives, but I'm from the Seattle area. When I moved back, I wanted not from Seattle. So going to Seattle was crazy. Like that's a big city. I'm from a small town. And so when I went to Seattle, I just had my mind open a little bit. And it made me want to pull back from specifically my mom, not my entire family. It wasn't until later when I came out, as queer that I actually pulled back from them a lot. But when I pulled back from my mom, it helped me have peace for the first time in my life. I felt grounded and I felt like I was finally getting to know myself. And when I left, I knew there was a point when I was like 19, 20, I looked at my mom and I was like, I can't save you. I have to save myself. And so creating that boundary was really helpful for me to get that control back in my life. And since then, just reinforcing those boundaries continuously.
Is this where the travel started for you?
No? 23, I had this boyfriend.
Yeah.
And he broke my heart. It was my first time, I feel like, in a relationship. I had my heart broken. I was like head over heels for him. It was a New Year's Day, and we had an amazing like New Year's Eve. So I thought, and I sat down on the bed and I was like, I have to tell you something. I'm so in love with you. And he was like, I think we should break up. Same breath, like not even a second later. Devastated. I was absolutely devastated. But after he was in the military, he like left Seattle straight for Hawaii after that. And I had this like moment where I was like, I can't be here anymore. Like I feel stuck. I felt the pattern. And part of me was running for sure. There was a lot of other nuance happening in the background with my community and stuff there. But my friend called me up. She's Filipino. And she was like, yo, do you want to go to the Philippines for like 10 days? And I was like, no. I want to buy a one-way ticket and travel through Asia. And at that point, I had nobody's ever left the country. Like it's crazy. My mom did like go across the border to Tijuana when she was in middle school or something, but they didn't have passports. Like even going state to state is crazy, right? And so I bought a one-way ticket to Manila, and I had this kind of theory. I was struggling with depression and suicidal ideation at this point. Like I was just really struggling mentally. I was 23, and I was like, if I'm going to die, I might as well die in Asia. Like it's going to either give me life or give me death, but either way, I want to go experience the world because I feel stuck. And so I did do the 10 days with my friend in the Philippines, but I stayed there longer as well, and then bought a one-way ticket to Bali, and then from there, like traveled through Thailand, lived there for a year, and then moved to Australia and lived there for a year, South Africa, and then Central and South America. So yeah, I've been super blessed.
If I'm gonna die, I might as well die in Asia. That's quite a statement.
Yeah.
Was there hope there as well?
Yeah,
that you
I think
discover
so.
something else?
I remember packing my backpack because I literally took like one of those backpacks and I was crying into my backpack, and my grandma was there actually. I was with my family when I was about to leave, and she came in and she was like, "What's wrong, sweetie?" And I was like, "Why does it have to be me?" And my grandma at this point had traumatized me a lot. But I was crying, and she was the person that came in. My grandparents are my parents in a way. And I was crying into my suitcase, and I was like, why does it have to be me? Why am I the one who has to leave and has to leave everything I know to go find myself? And she looked at me and said, because it's meant to be you. And I think that kind of stuck with me because I'm the cycle breaker in my family. Like I'm the black sheep, but I'm also the one who's broken the cycles. So anyways, I hope that answered your question.
It really does. So what did you discover then in yourself, right? You had this buildup of realizing that you needed distance, you needed to get away to, I guess, rediscover you or rebuild another version of you. What did that process look like? I mean, now you mentioned Philippines, traveling through Asia, Australia, and so on, but I'm curious about what did you learn?
I learned that I was not who people told me I was.
How so?
I wasn't as small as people said I was. I wasn't as mediocre as they told me I was. I wasn't incapable. I wasn't unintelligent. I unlearned all of it. I didn't even pick up a book and read a book until I was in Asia. And it was Eat, Pray, Love, of course.
Yeah.
But like because of the narrative I had been given, I felt like I wasn't smart enough to read. And then since then, I've just like all I read is like self-development books. And I came out when I was 23, and I owned that. That was really difficult, like battling with my sexuality and things like that was a really hard experience because my family was also really religious and did not think that it was acceptable for me to be gay. But I unlearned it all slowly. And it was devastating. There was more times than not I found myself on the floor of a hostel sobbing. But those were growing pains,
Yeah.
you know.
Hard, but still empowering, right?
Yeah.
Because, like you said, it's a tough situation to be in, but you're also proving, let's say, a lot of the things that have been said or conditioned about
Yeah.
you. You're proving all of that wrong.
Grieving the version of me that I knew.
And celebrating potentially the new one,
Yeah.
or experiencing life through a new one.
Yeah.
So this leads to a lot of change and I guess also some confidence to put yourself in other environments, right?
Yeah. I can't even believe I'm sitting here today.
There's confidence that comes with that, and a lot of change. Tell me about that. Where does that lead you?
I mean, besides to Copenhagen.
Yeah.
Germany before this.
Yeah.
You know, it leads me to exactly who I am today. And I know who I am. And I know what I bring to the table. And I know the value that I add to the world. And it brings me to a place where I walk into environments and ask myself if this is where I belong. And if I don't have the fear of walking away because I feel like I won't belong somewhere else again. I used to put myself in situations where I would just try and force myself into love or relationships because I felt like it was sparse. But actually, I don't feel that way anymore. Love isn't sparse, it's abundant.
You know, there's abundance because you've been exposed to more of it, which is was part of the beauty of traveling.
Yeah.
Seeing that love is many things, and also just interactions with people, new people that you meet. And that's really what you experience a lot of when you travel. At what point, you mentioned earlier, the start of considering coaching others or, becoming this digital nomad. So now we've spoken about your traveling. I'm curious about, because digital nomad is such a broad term, right? And you're coming from, okay, can I read? I'm just, okay, I can grow skills. You built a toolbox.
Never even owned a laptop to this point.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So tell me about that. Digital nomad as a North Star. How do you take those first steps, and what are you dreaming of?
Honestly, it was 2020 when I actually went fully into it. There was like a couple different endeavors I was playing with, but I didn't know how to do anything. I always wanted to be a personal trainer. When I was hairdressing, as I mentioned before, I couldn't pour into my own cup. And when I was in my weight loss journey, and my ex-boyfriend, honestly, I have to give him his flowers because he really inspired me to get into the gym and taught me a lot about like muscle building, like really into fitness, healthy guy. And so that was like really where my gym journey started in my early 20s. And so but even though I had lost all of this weight and I was committed to the gym, even in Asia, I was working out, doing Muay Thai, going to the gym every time I could. I felt like I didn't have the physique I wanted. And so when I was going through trying to launch my business, I didn't even want to go get a certification. I didn't feel like I looked like a personal trainer. And I wanted to work at a gym, but then I would think to myself and battle with it, I don't really want to be in a gym because that puts me back in a hairdressing position. I don't want to be behind the chair. I don't want to have to show up to work in order to make money. I want to be able to work with people because I'm an extrovert. But I don't want to be bound to a physical environment. Like that gives me anxiety. I want to travel the world. And so I didn't feel like I looked like a personal trainer. It struggled, like my body dysmorphia and everything. I struggled with even getting my certification. But then I posted on TikTok in 2020 about my weight loss transformation. And I had shown people, people that had never met me before, that I'd lost all this weight. And they didn't, I don't feel like they reacted. And so I don't think that I thought it was that big of a deal. I was like 135 pounds at this point. 250, like I said, was my heaviest.
Right.
And so I posted on TikTok and I went viral multiple times, and people's comments were, teach me, teach me, teach me. And I was like, do you think I could do this? Like literally asking myself that. And so I ended up going to ISSA and getting my certification, personal training and nutrition. And I, was like, I'm going to become an online coach. And at this point, life coaching, I mean, it has its ups and downs, life coaching, but like on TikTok and, TikTok was new and all of this. I was like, I feel like I could probably do that. And I kind of leaned into that and did a bit of a high ticket situation. And to my surprise, I was signing clients that were paying me thousands of dollars a month.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And how were you managing those, like practically? What were you working with?
Like the structures of my business? It was like, one-on-one. So
Yeah.
they were constantly communicating with me, had my phone number and stuff. And then we do like weekly Zoom calls
Mm.
where it felt, and this is still in my coaching today, it felt like life coaching and elements of therapy. You know, I'm a trauma-informed coach first. I always say that. But also mindset focused is really, really important to me. And so when my clients are working with me, we're always working through the narratives. It's not, okay, read a nutrition label, calories in, calories out. It's where did you get that story from? Who told you that you're not beautiful today? And I know that you just want to look this way and you've got vacation in 3 months and we got 60 pounds to lose, but we need to work on feeling confident today so that when vacation shows up, no matter what the scale says, you feel beautiful, you feel sexy, and you feel empowered.
That makes sense. I've heard that several times with this doubt about, is this my own transformation or my own story meaningful enough to communicate
I
and
mean,
have an
even on this
effect?
podcast, I was literally thinking that on the way on the flight over here. I was like, do
Really?
I even have a story that's worth telling? But I mean, of course, everybody does. But
Really, you do. But you had to overcome that. And I
Yeah.
guess talk to me about that, like validation or realizing that, this is inspiring. Because you said, you know, you'd shown pictures and people hadn't potentially reacted, but then you had videos that go viral and people react to that in, I guess, a deeper way than
yeah,
just applauding you or saying, well done. It
yeah,
resonates with something else in them. It inspires potential for change.
yeah.
That's quite a catalyst, right?
Yeah.
That's that's something. How does that sit with you and how do you navigate that?
I think that what's crazy is like visually, my weight loss journey is amazing, right? That's what people were applauding, and that's what inspired them and to follow me, and that's how I gain an audience. Like I said, I had 1,700 followers on Instagram when Lena's found me, but I think I had 100,000 on TikTok or more, but like right around there. And everybody was in the comments, teach me, teach me, teach me. But I think what was actually the most validating is I was posting like car talks, like little videos of me in my car motivating people, like asking them questions like, I don't know who needs to hear this, but why not you? And when I realized that I had more power to influence through motivation and inspiration, it made me feel like everything I had been through in my life had purpose. And I was leaning into that. Like my pain, my story, my resiliency, the audacity that I've had, that's what's led me here to be able to reach thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people.
Right. That's the cornerstone in the narrative, but also trusting that your story is worth communicating.
And then my thoughts are as well.
Yeah. And your thoughts. Explain that a bit more to me.
I think that, like, you know, when you struggle with insecurity and you struggle with feeling small or silenced, you don't feel like what you have to say matters or that your opinions are valuable. And that makes me sad to think about versions of me who never felt like they could take up space or open their mouth. But when people sit there and watch a 30-second video, a 90-second video, like, I don't know if consumers understand how much that means to us creators, that you want to hear what I have to say, like me. I don't know.
It's
beautiful.
meaningful. And it's, the power of words, right? There's inspiration in what comes out. I think that's an amazing story. So you're going from a high ticket, you're starting to succeed again.
Yeah.
Right? You set another goal.
Yeah.
You're stacking wins. You have a high ticket offering going on with Zoom calls and so on. And I guess we're getting into somewhere during pandemic or post within this. So what does the development of your business as an entrepreneur look like from there?
To summarize it, so 2020, came back from South Africa. I was traveling for a while through there, and I came into New York like March 15th, I think it was, and they closed the border behind me. They were like, boom, no more. I was like, what are you guys talking about? We saw like these like racist like kind of like memes going around, but we didn't know what coronavirus was. I was like, what is this? And so get in there, get on the subway, not a soul on the subway. It was so creepy. And so I was like, oh my God, I have no money. I literally have nothing. I started door dashing because I had just been traveling through Australia and drinking my way through South. I had no money. I was planning on coming here, getting a quick bartending job, going to Mexico and traveling through Central America. Yeah, it's just, I had no money. And so I started door dashing. And I was like, you know what? I'm a hairdresser. I always maintained my license at this point. And I was like, I need to get a job. And nobody was hiring. No salons were open. I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna get clients. I had clients previously at the like very high-end salon I worked at in Seattle, and they had always reached out to me about like, oh, tell me what color you did, and I was like, would people hire me again? So I ended up opening my own salon suite in Seattle, in July, and I started posting on TikTok around then. My papa, he's from the Seattle area, and I would like care for him as well. He ended up getting really sick, and so I called my family, and we weren't in communication at this point, and we all moved him to Texas. And so when that happened, it was November of 2022, or yeah, November of 2022. And that's when I started doing my high ticket. Right around then, I was balancing hairdressing. I started doing high ticket. And I told myself I need to retire from hairdressing. Otherwise, I'm never going to be a full-time digital nomad. And so it was probably a year that Linus courted me. I didn't think it was real. I thought it was a scam. Like the amount of people that had to get on a call, I was like, what do you mean? Is that a background? Like, I just didn't believe it. And so I started building out my business with Linus in 2022, November-ish, and we launched January 2023. And I told myself, like, if you don't retire from hairdressing, then you're never going to fully lean into it. And the money was so good in hairdressing. And I was living in Texas full time, but I knew that if I got a salon job in Texas, I would feel comfortable. And so I was actually at the beginning of my coaching journey, first 6 months, flying once a month to Seattle, working 5 12-hour days, fully booked as a pop-up artist. And making several $1,000s, coming home, living off of that until coaching got off the ground. And then in June of 2023, I walked away from hair full time, and that's really when business like got amazing.
When you could dedicate everything to it.
Yeah.
And what was that experience like? Because now you have freedom. You're stacking another success, right?
Yeah.
You're building your own. But like you mentioned on your travels, right? There's growing pains, and some of that is also in self-realization.
Yeah.
Like, what did coaching others teach you? Because you mentioned you're a trauma-informed coach, right? And that's what you spoke about. There's a lot of moments where you have to not just deal with others' traumas or whatever, but also your own. Tell me about that journey going into it as a coach.
What others taught me. The thing is, when I went full-time into coaching, I was navigating a divorce. My partner and I had broke up that summer. And so I had actually bought another one-way ticket to go back to Australia. And in that moment, I was working full-time with a 17-hour time difference, and I loved it. I was so happy. I was like, this is the life that I've created for myself while navigating grief and pouring into others with a broken heart. And like, there was days that I feel like I couldn't even get out of bed. And then my clients would message me and tell me that they were going through the same struggle, and they would inspire me to show up. They would inspire me to post. They would inspire the message I put up that day. They would inspire me to get to the gym. And you know, it's like a mirror sometimes looking at your clients. And even if I'm not currently going through what they're going through, I've been there. And I think that's what sets me aside from a lot of coaches, a lot of fitness coaches, or even weight loss coaches, is I've been there, and my trauma-informed lens helps me empathize with my clients. And there was a point where I had to put boundaries because I was almost, becoming, like feeling their pain too much. And it was draining me. I feel like I'm better at it now because it can feel like therapy coaching,
Right.
I'm holding your hand through it, and I mean that as a coach.
Could you elaborate just a bit more on what it means to be a trauma-informed coach?
A trauma-informed coach means that you understand that the lens of trauma is how you view the world and maybe how you view yourself. And so whether those are big T's or small T traumas, I feel like having that lens helps me understand why you might struggle with negative narratives about yourself, why you might struggle with food as a coping mechanism, why you might struggle with shame in the gym, shame around your body, why you might have gained the weight in the first place. Because a lot of women, unfortunately, I think it's 1 in 4 women have gone through sexual assault. And in that sense, a lot of women put on weight to hide themselves subconsciously or consciously from people to stop looking at them, to stop viewing them.
And you mentioned another thing which I'm curious about is learning how to set boundaries within that coaching space, right? You mentioned pouring into others' cups, right?
Yeah.
And figuring out setting boundaries in that sense. Could you elaborate a bit about what that process looks like?
Well, there's a lot of different scenarios, but when I get, an 8-minute voice note from a client talking about her boyfriend, I have to always redirect the conversation back, you know, and I always, and my clients will tell you this, I always say, if it affects your journey, I want to know about it. If you're going through a divorce, you're going through a breakup, whatever it might be, you know, somebody in your family has just passed on, I want to understand where you're coming from, because I'm not going to minimize the fact that you didn't hit your step goal this week, like you're lazy. Like, give me some context. But if we're constantly talking about your boyfriend, babe, like, we got to redirect the conversation back. And I always, if I don't have the tools, especially when it comes to like alcohol, you know, things like that, like I have clients, and because I'm sober, I think that a lot of clients maybe are attracted to me for that. They come to me and they're struggling with alcohol, and I'll hold space, but I am not equipped to help support you getting, you know, away from that. And so I will hold space and tell them my own experience, but I always redirect them to a therapist or somebody that can help them.
I think that's a very important boundary. I'm
Yeah.
curious about how you frame that with hold space, right? Because you experience people who need some professional guidance, something which is beyond the scope of what you can deliver,
Yes.
or are responsible for delivering. But there's still a space for a coach in that. Talk to me about what you mean by hold space.
Listen, I think that a lot of people don't actually know what it feels like to be listened to. Like, I will hold the space for you to actually be heard, and then repeat back what I've heard and make sure that I'm validating your experience. I understand life is stressful. I understand that at the end of the day, a glass of wine is what you want to lean into. I understand that you feel like your friends and family won't like you unless you give into peer pressure and drink with them on the weekends. I understand that. I want to hold space to hear why you feel that way. But what are we going to do about it? Because this is the thing that's holding you back from reaching your goals. And what's more important, how they perceive you or who you want to be?
So it can be hard sometimes for a coach to find where does that boundary go, right?
Yeah.
And realizing that there's still a space for you as a coach to
Yeah.
hold space, regardless of the other support that someone might need, right?
Yeah.
What are some of the key like learnings that you have that are worth sharing that others can learn from?
Yeah, I think that when it comes to the boundary, it's like, yeah, I want to hold space, I want to understand, but what I do as a coach is provide the structure. I think that's the biggest thing. I will always strategize with my clients. I'm your coach, I'm your cheerleader. What are we going to do about it? You know, so that's the point of difference. And that's where there's a hard line there. If I'm not supporting you and creating change, I'm not coaching you. Does
Right.
that make sense?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, okay, we understand we struggled with this. We had a bad weekend. We drank too much. We overate. We leaned into this or whatever it is. We have our cycle. What are we doing next time? How are we creating that self-awareness? And what are we doing this week? What are we doing today about it? Because I think a lot of times too on my weight loss journey, I was like, oh, I'll start Monday, or I had a bad meal. I'm going to be off track for the next week, or even today, like, oh my God, I had a cheeseburger. So that means I can't choose to have, you know, a high protein, high vegetable diet later, you know, but what are we doing right now to change it? Get up, go get your steps. Like, let's go. You know, I'm your cheerleader.
Getting to an action.
Yes.
I think that's potentially also something which it seems you have to.
And that's the difference between a coach and a therapist. A therapist is going to help you process. A coach is going to help you make action.
And implement.
Yeah.
And that's what we communicate a lot about. That's the big like role which coaches play in people's lives, right?
fact.
Bridge between knowing something and implementing.
Yeah.
And not just dwelling on, because you have traumas as well, right? And not just, and clients that have, and you just, it's easy to stay within that, right? You sharing, they sharing, and then one lacks the implementation part. But it seems like you're very conscious of having to go beyond that with your clients.
Absolutely.
You've mentioned a term before, which I've heard, which is the difference between an explanation and an excuse in some of these dialogues. Can you elaborate a bit on that?
Well, my clients will come to me with, like I've said, like these situations where they're going through a breakup and they didn't hit their 10,000 steps. Why didn't you hit your 10,000 steps? Because you were grieving. That's an explanation, not an excuse. But maybe week after week, I'm seeing your check-ins and you're not hitting your steps. And not that 10,000, I don't want to say that, but you're not hitting your goals week after week. We're dealing with an excuse now. You're going through an acute situation that is stressful. You've just changed jobs. Your kid is sick, whatever it is. There's explanations. But we, as a lot of us women, I'll say, struggle with this narrative that we're not doing enough, that we aren't enough and that we're lazy and we're never going to make it happen. And when you struggle with that narrative, when you have an explanation, it can make you feel like a failure. And my biggest thing is to not reinforce that. And so even setting milestones initially in coaching for my clients that feel obtainable, like girls come in and they're like 10,000 steps, a gallon of water. I'm like, what are you doing right now? 3,000? Okay, we're hitting 5,000 steps. We're getting 90 ounces of water. You know what I mean? So I think that's the biggest thing, is just making sure that you give your client perspective so that they don't feel like a failure, so that they don't quit.
Right. You've come a long way from where we started this story, not just in let's say what you've learned, but also how you perceive yourself and what that gives you the opportunity to do in your life for yourself and for others. Like we mentioned in the start, many chapters you've gone through. If we're going to fast forward a bit in the book, what are some of the chapters that you foresee for you?
A book.
Going forward. A book?
Yeah.
Literally? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
What's the book about?
It's definitely a self-development, self-help book, but it's about my life and how my traumas and how my experiences have helped me become resilient and have helped me connect to my why. And I want to use my pain as purpose to inspire people. And I know that in some ways my story has already impacted so many people, but I do feel like I have a lot more to teach the world. And so I want to write a book.
And you say strengthen your why. Could you reiterate for me what your
I feel like your why is always developing, right? Like in life with different things. But a big why of mine is that I want to prove to myself that I can do absolutely anything I set my mind to. From somebody who couldn't even pick up a book to read it because she didn't feel intelligent enough, to literally releasing a bestseller. Wouldn't that be crazy?
That would be amazing.
Manifesting it.
Yeah, and sharing a message, right? Because I think it's clear to me that you have a bit of a different perspective on what drives change and what people's change also might be dependent on solving, right?
Yeah.
When you look at the industry as a whole, where there's also been development, talking from the Weight Watchers meetings when you were a kid until now, what do you feel that the industry is potentially still getting wrong about what drives change in others or what they need to account for?
What are they getting wrong? I think what they're getting wrong, and especially in a space, and I'm not anti-GLP-1, but in a space where we are leaning into pharmaceuticals more for assistance with weight loss, is that habits aren't the main thing that are actually going to change your life. Your life is a reflection of your habits. Like Atomic Habits is one of the main pieces of literature I recommend to clients, because that's literally the base of my coaching, I would say. When I read that book, I was already well into my coaching journey, and I was like, this is literally what I preach every day. 80% of losing weight is nutrition, 20% fitness, but 100% of the journey is mindset. And your life is a reflection of what you believe about yourself and who you are, and it's your daily habits. And so even when clients, I have plenty of clients who are on GLP-1s, are not building habits that are going to support them, then they're actually not creating real change in their life. Because as soon as that, coping mechanism is gone, they're not going to have the habits to sustain their results. And so I think one thing that we might be getting wrong is not taking accountability for what needs to happen internally, mentally, and emotionally for you to be able to heal and transform your narrative.
But luckily, it seems we have an entrepreneur and coach like yourself who truly has that focus and is succeeding with, let's say, bridging the gap between your own lived experiences, the inspiration that is for others, and creating change for them through implementation.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Indya, thank you very much for sharing your story, a story worth communicating and worth sharing.
Thank you.
We'll be back in a second with a different section. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Indya.
Hi.
Hi. Welcome to the Walk Paths. This is a short little session where I'm going to get you to rank on a scale from 1 to 10.
Okay.
The things that I'll present you for regarding their impact on people's health, happiness, and longevity.
Okay.
Okay. So the first one, sobriety.
Yeah. Scale of 1 to 10?
Scale of 1 to 10. How
Most
would you rank?
impact 10?
Yes, exactly.
10.
10?
Yeah.
It's that important.
9.
Put some words to
Okay,
it.
9. Final answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
9.
How about journaling?
7.
Mm-hmm. Quite up there as well. Detoxes.
2.
a little shake. How about supplements then?
I think that's depending, but for most people, I would say 6.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So we're going to change it up a little bit now. Tell me a skill that you've acquired in an unexpected place.
I can skateboard.
You can skateboard?
And surf.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's a good hidden talent
with
to
this
have
hair.
there. So I guess that would go as a hidden talent that you have as
Yeah.
well. Where did you learn to surf?
Hawaii.
Hawaii, of course, of course. Okay, so what is a health and fitness trend that or habit that's a non-negotiable for you?
Steps.
Getting steps?
Yeah. Steps.
A step number or
No, but yes, I try and get 10,000 a day, but movement. And if I can't get any movement in, it's always steps.
okay.
Yeah.
And lastly, what do you think is a health and wellness trend that you think people should focus less on?
Detoxes, cleanses. Yeah. Fad diets.
Right?
Yeah. Carnivore.
Easy.
Keto. Oh, sorry.
No.
I keep going.
You can keep going?
Yeah.
Which one's more?
Also no carbs.
Mm-hmm.
Also low fat. Also sugar-free everything. Yeah. Sugar's not actually the devil.
No?
No.
Great stuff. All right, thanks a lot, India.
Thank you.
Short and sweet.